AITA for getting angry at my foster mother's way of fixing me. So I, 17M, have lived with foster carers and 38F and Bill, 40M, for 11 years. The reason I was put into foster care is because of the death of my younger baby sister, 14 months, when I was 4. To put it lightly, it wasn't exactly natural causes and was caused by a bio parent, if you get what I'm trying to say. And I can vividly remember everything around those circumstances, think about it every day, and mourn the loss of my sister. The thing is, this has caused a rather intense reaction to young children. I can't be around kids under the age of 4, approximately, without having panic attacks, flashbacks, or screaming fits. I've tried to get professional help, but counselors say they aren't trained enough to help me, and therapists have extremely long waiting lists. Neither social services or my carers are willing to pay for private therapy, and I can't afford it on my part-time job. The issue was also ignored/mocked by my family for a while, since they didn't know the exact circumstances of me going into care. So for years they would trigger me on purpose because they thought it was funny. I've tried building up a tolerance by watching YouTube videos, but it isn't much help, although I'm almost completely functional in public now. I wasn't until about January this year. In the last few years, the siblings of both and Bill have had babies. 2 to each sibling, 6 babies total, all under the age of 4 currently, the oldest being 3. I can't see these children, so usually end up in a back room somewhere or on the streets walking circles when we go to see the kids/they come to us. And Anne's mom have decided that since I'm nearly an adult, now it's time for me to grow up and fix myself, because it's awkward to have a kid that can't see the babies. So over the last 2 years, they've begun lying to me. They would take me out, saying we're going one place, then go to the baby's house. They'd then get angry when I'd have panic attacks. Every Christmas, they'll say the babies aren't coming round, then shove the babies in my face and get angry when I remove myself from the room, saying I'm ruining Christmas. We'll go to other relatives' houses and then pretend they told me all along that the babies were going to be there. I don't mind going as much, it's just the fact they won't tell me means I'm usually unprepared. For example, one winter I ended up going for a walk in below zero temperatures in a t-shirt because I was told we were going to my uncle's, which is rooms I can go in to avoid babies. But we ended up at Ann's brother's, which doesn't have rooms I can go in. I also got in trouble that time for showing and up in front of extended family for my reaction to the babies, aka 3 panic attacks back to back, which is why I then spent hours in the cold. They also didn't tell me another relative was pregnant until she had the baby and we were going to see it. They told me on the car journey to the hospital. I found out today that all this has been part of a plan to secretly try fix my phobia because I'm getting too old for being scared of babies. I've also been told I'm being pathetic, overreacting, being offensive, and disturbing the mothers/babies. I got mad. It's not my fault I witnessed the tragedy of my sister's death when I was so young, and lying to me about it only causes me more issues. Instead of being in awe. So AITA? Edit. Thank you to everyone who's commented. I wasn't expecting such a response, to be honest, and it made me cry a bit because sometimes I feel like I'm going mad. I will book an appointment with a GP soon. I'm getting a new social worker and an advocate soon, so we'll talk to them too. I have a job already, but the pay is very minimal, so I'm trying to get a couple more for over the summer, but finding jobs is quite difficult. I'm saving to try get out. If it gets far worse than this, I have a friend who will let me stay at hers. But her place is small, so it's not the best long term. I'm not sure what will happen from here. Updates will probably be slow, if any. Edit 2. I also feel quite guilty going against my carers because it feels like I owe them. But there's other stuff that's happened too in the last year that could be said to be worse than this, so really it does need reporting. However, it denies all constantly and doesn't believe she's ever in the wrong. She's never apologized for anything. Not really sure how she'd react to me reporting this. Edit 3. Today I get to spend 4 hours on a desk chair crammed in a random corner because the bed I'm staying in at Bill's parents has the cot next to it and the babies are visiting. Edit 4. And I've been kicked out because I'm invading Anne's space. Right after a lecture where she blamed me for my fear. Relevant comments. Can OOP talk with his social worker about this situation? OOP. My social worker isn't very good. It's been brought up before. Kuth contacted her over a different situation that was also described as abuse. But she's being replaced soon. I also kind of feel bad reporting it, because in some ways I feel some dedication / that I owe my carers for looking after me. But like every day, I more and more realize how bad it's been. The last year has been the worst for it. I had a really bad mental health crisis in December. Because of it, there's other stuff that's happened that hasn't been detailed here. OOP on receiving outside resources. OOP. Yeah, I've been on CMHS radar since I was put in care at 4. They gave me some art therapy when I was about 7, but my carers withdrew me from it because it turned me weird. So now I'm in the fight to get back on their list. Been re-referred for over 2 years now. Commenter 3. Not at all, you have a clear case of PTSD, and your foster parent knows it's a real problem, as they knew it was something too big for social workers to handle, and they are purposely triggering you removing any form of a safe space that you may have by bringing in the little kids. You're a victim in a terrible, messed up situation, not an asshole. OOP. They don't want me diagnosed with anything because it'll give me an excuse to not work as hard, or something. They withdrew me from art therapy at 7 because it turned me weird. But thank you so much for your comment. It makes me feel a little bit less insane. Where's Bill in all of this? Has OOP spoke with him? OOP. He has a tendency to not stand up to his wife. She also denies a lot to him. There was a situation with some really bad stuff, she said to me April 2024, which Bill found out about in October. He was going to call the social worker about it, but she persuaded him that I was lying to make her look bad. We also had a conversation about 4 hours back, and tried to accuse me of faking my phobia with Bill present. And all that's happened when I've argued back is that I'm now banned from family holidays. And I got kicked out the house for a few hours. I'm going to do an update about some of the stuff that's happened in the last 24 hours, I think. But at the end of the week, once I've also contacted my GP and social worker. Updating comments. June 3rd, 2025, 4 days later. Sorry, long reply coming. I was going to post an update, but don't think enough has happened yet to warrant one. On Saturday, I had a major argument with my carers. Basically, I was staying at my grandparents' on Bill's side, and some babies came over. Usually my safe space in the house away from the kids is the room Ann and Bill were staying in. So I was put in there, on a small desk to sit out the day. The room I was sleeping in had the cot and baby changing facilities. However, and did not like that it happened to be the room she slept in. So she had a go at me, saying I was invading her space, and kicked me out onto the corridor. Then Bill turned up, and they both yelled at me, saying I was faking my fear out of spite because my little brother had been put in the single whilst I had to share with my sister. There's arguments over it, but that's a different story. They also try to blame my trauma reactions on my grandma. They're not. Last time I checked, I wasn't the one who King, Una lived, baby's sister, to which I was kicked out the house and told I'm never seeing my grandparents again / never being brought on a family holiday again. Whilst out, I tried to call both my social worker and independent worker, as well as mental health helplines, such as Childline, Mine, Papyrus, but none picked up. The helplines were experiencing high demand. Papyrus called back, but I was on the coast, and they couldn't hear me over the wind. A friend offered to send money for me to get home, but I was in the middle of nowhere with no public transport easily accessible without a long hike. The town grandparents live in is very cut off. Apparently whilst I was out, and asked my sister, WTF is wrong with name. My granddad ended up taking me out the next day to avoid conflict. Yesterday I was meant to have counseling, but my counselor forgot, so I spent an hour sat in the waiting room before deciding to meet up with a friend instead. I ended up dropping out of college this year early. I'm restarting fresh elsewhere next year. Because of a suicide attempt in December, I decided to do one AS exam, so I didn't feel like a complete failure, but I was on reduced timetable to help me recover. So this week is my first week out of college completely. Exams ended. Anyway today, and came home, and told me I'm fat because I spent a day tidying my room instead of going out. And also yelled at me, because when I loaded the dishwasher it was full, so I missed 2 cereal bowls, and that's not good enough for her, even though she doesn't do any cleaning around the house. Anyways, I'm pissed off, tired, and barely hanging in, waiting on a call back from my GP so I can get an appointment. Not been a good couple days. Additional information from OOP on if he has been able to speak with any of his workers. OOP. This is going to be stupid, but I haven't. I'm absolutely terrified of losing my foster dad TBH. I've spent all week putting it off, but I spoke to my friend's adoptive mother, who had been a foster carer for a good decade, and she says if I don't do it, she'll report them, or I at least need to talk to my foster dad about it, and tell him how bad the situation is. She's angry that I'm not in actual therapy, because apparently my carers get money that's supposed to go on stuff like that. And like everything else too. With the training she gets, she should know not to say half the shit she does. I spoke to my siblings. Both siblings confirm now independently that they've heard plans to force expose me to babies to try to fix me. If necessary, I can get statement from friends. I have a quite decent backlog of evidence. The middle sibling is pretty much already pre-planning for a few years in residential care. My younger brother is scared, but angry too. I'm fairly certain at this point he has fairly bad depression and an eating disorder, both of which aren't addressed. So I'm going to talk to my foster dad and basically present it and give him an ultimatum. I don't want to lose him, but if stuff doesn't change or A makes a single move against me, I have the independent reviewing officer in my contacts and I will call her. I might do anyways, but I'm scared. Update 2. July 30th, 2025, 2 months later. After that initial post, there was a major argument where my foster mom attempted to blame my fear on myself, saying I was doing it to attention seek, and after that she said I would no longer be allowed to see this side of the family. Conveniently, last week when they were visiting family, my foster mom arranged an orthodontist appointment that meant I couldn't go. In complete honesty, a blessing, because whilst I really want to see my grandparents still, I didn't particularly want to go through what had happened the previous holiday again. I was left behind with my uncle. My old college spoke to my independent reviewing officer, sort of like an outside social worker, who isn't meant to side with either the parents or kids from my understanding, a sort of neutral person. There was stuff my carers were telling workers in meetings that wasn't correlating with what my college had been told by myself, so they reported it. My little sister also reported some stuff, so in the end I didn't bring up issues, it was others around me. So today, the IRO came to speak to me alone. I reported all the baby situation stuff, and discover my carers have in fact been suggested to take therapy training to help me handle my trauma, but had turned it down, believing they didn't need it. I also reported some other stuff as well. I now know my options, and in 5 months I turn 18. I believe the best option now is for me to move out at 18, which will be financially supported by the local council and social services. I currently don't have a proper job because my national insurance number hasn't been sorted yet, so no one will hire me, but I should be getting it in the next few weeks. Hopefully then I can get a job which will help with moving out. From what I understand, with my situation the local council will cover rent if it's under £90 per week through a social housing scheme. Then I get about £75 a week for food and stuff. If I want somewhere with a higher rent, I cover the costs. I'll also be getting universal credit once I turn 18. I believe a part-time job will be best to make living more financially comfortable, even with the monetary support though. But yeah, update. Sorry it's been a while, and thank you to everyone who commented on my original post with help and sympathy. If anyone has any questions, I can answer them. Hopefully things will get better now. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. At least she, editor's note, and will be on record for being horrible, and hopefully no more kids will be placed with her. Good luck, Op. OOP. I don't think she'd take more kids anyway. She's a family guardian, so she's biologically related to me and my siblings, and has expressed before she never actually wanted kids, and took us in out of guilt. But at least, yeah, in the small chance she tried taking in anyone else, it'd be refused. Commenter 3. Wow, your foster parents have no business being foster parents. They shoot down efforts to help you, thinking they know better, which they don't. And you know they get money for taking care of you to them. You're just a warm body. What crappy people. Well, it sounds like things are going to turn around and you're going to land on your feet, and that's good. Get therapy when you can, hopefully sooner rather than later, and sure it's going to take a long time and a lot of therapy, and I wish you best of luck. OOP. Yeah, and my foster mom, since making the post, said she might be forced to charge me rent when I turn 18 because they'll be given less funding to cover me. If I'm going to have to pay something either way, I'd rather live by myself. OOP on his siblings, and if they are okay. Younger sister has been mentioned in prior posts. OOP. Both siblings are in my household with me. My sister, I believe, is planning on going into some kind of semi-independent living once she's 16. I was never given the option because everyone thought our living situation was fine. She hasn't considered herself a part of the family for a while now, and isn't home often. I'm not sure what will happen to my little brother.